We all have our favorite iconic horror movie villain, from Michael Myers to Freddy Krueger to Jason Voorhees. We love to fear them and we love to root for them in some cases. However, some of our favorite villains have backstories we were totally unaware of. Backstories that make their lives seem rather bleak and tragic, in turn making us sympathize with them instead of fear them. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 horror movie monsters with depressing backstories. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And with that, let's jump in. Coming in at number 5, Candyman. Daniel Robertelli, also known as Candyman, is the titular main antagonist of the 1992 slasher horror film of the same name and its sequels, based off of the short story by Clive Barker. Now, Candyman's origins are explored in a legend surrounding the tragic death of a painter in the city of Chicago during the early 1800s, the story itself appearing in 1890. The legend told that Candyman was initially the son of a slave who became extremely wealthy after inventing a machine which mass-produced shoes during the American Civil War. With his newfound fortune, the father sent his boy to one of the best schools in America. He grew up to become a polite and good-natured gentleman as well as a well-known painter, most famous for capturing a person's status in portraits. Sometime around 1890, the young painter had been commissioned by a wealthy landowner to capture the beauty of his daughter, a white virgin. The painter's only sin was falling for the girl with whom they were to have a child out of wedlock. Unfortunately, the girl's father had discovered their relation and was left so outraged that he hired a lynch mob to find and kill the young painter. As the mob chased him down the streets of the near north end of Chicago, they eventually overpowered him and sawed off his right hand with a rusty blade. His body was then smeared with honey, causing the bees to sting him to death and prompting the future generations of the neighborhood to christen him Candyman. Coming in at number 4, Frankenstein's Monster. Frankenstein's Monster, often referred to as Frankenstein, is a fictional character who first appeared in Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein. In the story, Victor Frankenstein builds the creature in his laboratory through an ambiguous method consisting of chemistry and alchemy. The monster is described as 8 foot tall and hideously ugly, but sensitive and emotional. It attempts to fit into human society but is ultimately shunned, which leads him to seek revenge against Frankenstein. As depicted by Shelley, the monster is a sensitive, emotional creature whose only aim is to share his life with another sentient being like himself. From the very beginning, he is rejected by everyone he meets and realizes from the moment of his birth that even his own creator cannot stand the sight of him. This is obvious when Frankenstein says, "One hand was stretched out, seemingly to detain me, but I escaped." Now, upon seeing his own reflection, he realizes that he too was repulsed by his appearance. His greatest desire, though, is to find love and acceptance, but when the desire is denied, he swears revenge on his creator. Now, more interesting still, there is a deeper meaning to the monster when you look closely. The monster has been analogized to an oppressed class. Shelley wrote that the monster recognized the division of property, of immense wealth and squalid poverty, whereas others see the monster as a tragic result of uncontrolled scientific progress. Either way, his story is absolutely tragic. Coming in at number 3, the Phantom of the Opera. Eric, also known as the Phantom of the Opera, is the title character from Gaston Leroux's novel Le Phantom de l'Opera. In the original novel, few details are given regarding Eric's past. It does, however, confirm that Eric has traveled to multiple countries including France, Russia, Persia, and northern Vietnam, learning various arts and sciences along the way. Eric himself laments the fact that his mother was absolutely horrified by his birth deformity and that his father, a trust master mason, never saw him. Most of Eric's history is actually revealed by a mysterious figure known throughout most of the novel as the Persian or the Daroga, who saved Eric's life in Persia and followed him to Paris. In the original novel, Eric is described as corpse-like and is referred to as having a death's head throughout the story. He has no nose, eyes that are sunken so deep that all that is seen are 2 skull-like sockets, except when his golden eyes glow in the dark, skin that is yellow and tightly stretched across his bones, and only a few wisps of ink-black hair behind his ears and on his forehead. He is described as extremely thin, so much so that he resembles a skeleton. Christine graphically describes his cold, bony hands, which also smell of death. Eric sometimes even plays up his macabre appearance, such as sleeping in a coffin and dressing up as the Red Death for the masked ball. However, we can't help the way we look. That is sad. Coming in at number 2, Carrie White. Carrietta N. White, best known as Carrie White, is the titular main protagonist from Stephen King's first horror novel Carrie, published back in 1974. She is the only daughter of Margaret and Ralph White, although it is hinted to that Ralph may have had other children with different women. For all of her childhood and misunderstood teenage life, Carrie, whose father abandoned his family and later died in a construction accident, was disciplined for being taken by curses and secretly abused and beaten into submission, and mistreated by her mentally ill, religiously fanatical mother for everything on a daily basis. Later, Carrie was incessantly picked on and mistreated by her classmates because of her differences, and was of course at the bottom of the social hierarchy, with no one knowing, not even her mother, that Carrie possessed extraordinary powers. These powers would come forth during high school, after she had her first period in the girls' locker room. This in turn would cause a chain reaction, and not just to Carrie's demise but hundreds of other students. As we all know, when a so-called prank at a senior prom occurs, which saw kids pouring pig's blood on Carrie, she finally snapped, lost her sanity, and used her abilities to take revenge on her bullies. She ultimately kills everyone before returning home and killing her homicidal mother as well. In the end, an entire town was destroyed, with Carrie taking the lives of around 440 lives. Moral of the story, don't bully people. And finally coming in at number 1, Jason Voorhees. To quote the narrator of Friday the 13th, "There's a legend around here, a killer buried but not dead, a curse on Crystal Lake, a death curse, Jason Voorhees curse. They say he died a boy but he keeps coming back. Few have seen him and lived, some have even tried to stop him. No one can. People forget he's down there, waiting." Now, Jason is of course the main antagonist and centerpiece of the Friday the 13th franchise. He was an almost silent, undead, and seemingly unstoppable killing machine. Jason is an iconic madman who haunts Camp Crystal Lake and the surrounding area, driven to slaughter anyone he encounters to avenge the death of his beloved mother Pamela. As of right now, Jason has killed around 161 people over the years. However, that stat aside, he has a devastating backstory. Jason was born in the small town of Crystal Lake on June 13th, 1946, to Elias and Pamela Voorhees. He was afflicted with severe facial deformities, hydrocephalus, an abnormally large head, and mental disabilities. Raising Jason on her own, Pamela kept her son isolated from the community, not letting him attend school and educating him in their home. This would lead Jason to admire his mother, following through on all her commands, and that's one of the reasons why his mother's ghost gives him commands. In the summer of 1957, Pamela brought Jason with her to Camp Crystal Lake, where she worked as a cook. He was bullied almost instantly by the other campers, with Jason attempting to escape his tormentors. However, the cruel children caught up with him on the dock and threw him into the lake, where he ultimately drowned. Even though his body was never found, the camp closed as a result before reopening the following summer. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with that list? Were there any horror movie monsters that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 2. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos. Top 5 worst horror movies of the decade you should never watch. Jessica Thill said, "The only good thing about The Bye Bye Man was Carrie Ann Moss." I agree and disagree. Not even Carrie Ann could save that film, but I do love her. I went through a deep obsession with her once. I've seen every movie. Quiz me. Mateus Markusik said, "I would love to have some conversations with Lucy." I like talking. We can talk together if you want, if that interests you. Kathy Papa said, "Wow, thanks, I was thinking about watching Smiley. No more though. I don't even know why you would think about watching Smiley. It looked atrocious." Creepy at the Disco to Battle said, "I didn't know Shane Dawson was in a movie. I'm shook." I didn't know he was in a movie either until I did the research to that list. And I'm also shook. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later.